everybody? My name is Austin. I'm a product designer at GitLab. Jumping into this week's agenda. Right in front of us, pretty cool UI change recently came to GitLab, the reply field. So this used to be like a button inside like an input. It was an interesting discussion. Jeremy opened up talking a little bit more about why this came about, but fun UX change to the way that we carry on our discussion threads within GitLab. Next thing I want to talk about, I got hooked on this like random idea that I had a while back, and I had 5 minutes between a meeting, so I kicked off this MR to add in a functionality that has been like driving me insane. I've added so many collapsible sections in my Markdown editors. I'm hoping we can get some more support behind this and help it move forward. I think it'd be super useful. I know it's not like vanilla Markdown, it's not the purest thing, but I find it super useful. Next thing I want to jump into is talking a little bit more about the keys and tokens pattern that I'm trying to document. I opened up a merge request against Pajamas to submit a change of like how this pattern should behave when we are creating new keys and new tokens. Initially, I'm proposing like using a modal workflow. I was just talking to Annabelle literally like an hour ago, and she made me very aware of some like key attributes that might make this a little more challenging, like clicking outside the modal dismisses it, or that the primary action closes it. So those things could definitely hamper the workflow a bit. So that might be going back to the drawing board. But definitely that pattern will help us establish what we'll do elsewhere in the application once we figure out the kinks there. Next, I'm working on conducting some unmoderated testing to validate what seems like a very small change. It's just essentially changing push rules to source control, but I want to have some better understanding if this is actually like valuable. What's awesome is since this is in a merge request already, since I've already like, created a change for it, I'm thinking about using Gitpod to essentially test both of these, essentially giving the task like change this setting within push rules, and then another task to change this setting within merge request approval rules to get some live experimentation to see how users would behave using how the system looked before and after, and see if there's any improvement as a way to justify that this is a solution that we will want to merge in, as opposed to just taking, yeah, I think source control is a better thing to call it. So hopefully going to get some hard data on that to validate that decision. Next, I submitted another merge request. I guess merge requests is a theme for this week. Based off of an idea that Ton had, it's one that I've wanted to get around to for a while now, but it's not obvious. This little section of checkboxes down here, that they're not directly associated here. At least they're more like approval settings as opposed to approval rules. Funny enough, that we call them merge request approval project settings in the docs. So I've got a change in here to do that, just adds a header, really nothing crazy, and updates the docs to reflect that. But I think that should help us in our discussion about breaking down group level merge request approvals. That way we can help split the work a little bit better. I also met with Dennis this week to discuss what our opportunities can be for improving the sus score. We identified two. There's going to be one focused on improving the messaging around SSH keys with a stretch goal of replacing the component with our calendar date picker. And the other one will be clarifying the call to action of personal access tokens. So this will be great for better clarifying to the user, hey, you have tokens expired, here's your primary action to go get it, and also rearranging some of the columns so that they better align with the content that they're more relevant to. And lastly, I realized that I had neglected to keep this board really updated at all, so I've updated the Managed Compliance UX board to reflect more or less what I'm working on related to compliance. I do some stuff outside of compliance, so that's not necessarily in scope, but if you drop it into the next iteration, because I'm going to go out on some vacation time, you can see what I more or less have scope for myself for when I come back. Seems like a lot, but some of these are like super related. So like GPG keys and tokens and SSH keys is all kind of like one altogether. So trying to keep my context switching to a minimum. That's it. Hope you all have a great Family and Friends Day if you haven't had it already.